Hello there and welcome. My name is Brent Smith and I'm the Common Constitutionalist. And today I want to share with you a short video from Professor Thomas G. West, a professor of politics at Hillsdale College. In late April 2020, Professor West joined Dr. Larry Arnn, professor of Hillsdale, and two other esteemed conservative academics, Kevin Portteus and Adam Carrington, in a symposium to discuss, quote, the coronavirus and the Constitution, unquote. Normally, if I single out anyone, I single out just Dr. Arnn, as no one, in my opinion, is more versed in everything related to our founding fathers, the documents they created, and how prescient their thoughts and writings are, and how they still apply to today's societal ills. What most impressed me beyond the obvious expertise of the subject is West's plain-spokenness. He didn't spend his time spewing talking points or bloviating in academic gibberish speak, as virtually all leftist academics do. West plainly and succinctly explained how the left is violating not only our natural rights, but their oaths of office to uphold the national and their own states' constitutions. Enjoy the education.
I'm going to differ somewhat from my colleague who just spoke, Dr. Carrington. I believe America's state and local governments are engaging in an unprecedented denial of the most important natural rights of the people. There has been no significant difference between Republicans and Democrats with regard to the response to the virus. Worst of all, there has been almost no serious resistance to the suspension of natural and civil rights. Politicians, our despicable news media, and most citizens have been complicit. There's nothing close to a precedent for all of this in American history. It's one thing to require a vaccination. It's another thing to confine most of the nation to house arrest and shutting down half the economy. And yet all of this has been done not with a bang or even with a whimper. What are our natural rights? Our Declaration speaks of life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Other founding documents add the right to free exercise of religion and the right to acquire and possess property. The purpose of government, as the Declaration says, is to secure these rights. These words are so familiar that for most of us, they've been emptied of any real meaning beyond what we vaguely remember from high school history courses and the like. We don't any longer have in our guts a real sense of what they mean. And I'll illustrate that by saying something briefly about three of our natural rights: liberty, free exercise of religion, and property. First, the natural right to liberty. We've been taught to believe pretty much that there are only two things that would deprive us of liberty: bringing back slavery and taking away the right to vote. But liberty means so much more. For example, take the right of the people peaceably to assemble, affirmed in both the federal and the Michigan Bill of Rights. People today seem to take that to mean, vaguely, the right to participate in public protests. Yes, that's one meaning of assemble, but not the most important meaning. The right to assemble also includes the liberty to get together with other people, others who might share a common hobby or share a common interest in a book, a reading group. It means the right to share Easter dinner with family and friends, the right to play with one's children in a public park without fear of being arrested for going outside and playing with a child in the park, and the right to get together with acquaintances in bars and restaurants, sharing hobbies. Today, the right peaceably to assemble has been abolished indefinitely. Most states have placed everyone under house arrest with permission to leave only for government-approved purposes. To illustrate how fundamental that natural right of assembly was thought to be at the time of the founding, when the Congress debated the First Amendment in 1789, Theodore Sedgwick, congressman, criticized the proposed right of assembly as, quote, redundant in light of freedom of speech, unquote. he said, if people freely converse together, they must assemble for that purpose. It is a self-evident, inalienable right which the people possess. It is certainly a thing that would never be called into question. It is derogatory to the dignity of the House of Representatives to descend to such minutiae, unquote. It was inconceivable to Sedgwick and to most Americans throughout our history that the liberty of freedom of assembly, getting together with your family and friends and whatever, doing ordinary innocent things, that right would be suspended or canceled. And yet here we are. At least for now, that right is gone. Second, freedom of religion. This freedom is better understood today than the right of assembly, but even that has been summarily canceled for a large number of Americans. In many states, you will be arrested if you worship together with others for the first time in American history. For the founders, the natural right to free exercise of religion was not just any old right, but a natural right of the highest importance to Christians and other believers, one which many founders regarded as the highest purpose of government altogether. Third, consider the natural right to acquire and possess property. Our founders spoke of that right frequently. They designed an elaborate set of laws to support the right to own property, to use one's own property in whatever non-dangerous terms they pleased, to acquire property by selling their labor or the product of their labor in a nationwide free market. Today, as you know, most of America has been denied the right to acquire and possess property on the terms they choose. Instead, any use or sale of property is presumptively forbidden, with some exceptions reluctantly granted by government in the case of, quote, essential, unquote, businesses. The deprivation of this right may be viewed as a necessity by those whose paychecks are assured, those who work for government, those who work for wealthy nonprofits, wealthy universities. But for everyone else, the loss of a job means the loss of income that would otherwise support themselves and their families. The natural right to acquire property is not an abstraction in a high school civics textbook for someone who has lost his job. I hear every day of another American thrown into fewer hours, lower pay, or laid off, including here in Hillsdale, many such cases. I hear every day of businesses shutting down by the thousands all over America. Among my friends and acquaintances and their relatives, the people protesting the crackdown are people with a real stake in society, as in a job and bills to pay. They are not motivated by esoteric debates about political philosophy, the rights of man, the natural rights. They don't have a walk-in closet full of moral signifiers that they use to display their membership in narrow identity groups. They just try to live their lives as best they can under conditions set for them. Those conditions are becoming untenable now, and so they are making as much noise as they can about it. Around the world, I'm going to quote a political scientist now who made the following statement, which I don't necessarily endorse. Around the world, the governmental shutdown of the economy and society in the effort to contain the pandemic threatens human life and liberty. And human life, he meant human life because people need to work. They need to produce income to buy the things they need. And if it's not ended soon, he continues, people will have the natural right to resist through civil disobedience or even revolution, unquote. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. God willing, our rulers will wake up in time to prevent it. Still, when government undertakes a deliberate policy of depriving people of their liberties in the name of public health, and depriving people of their livelihoods in the name of public health, not for a brief moment, but indefinitely, what else can one expect?